You are watching Issues at Hand on Church of Uganda Family TV. My name is Bruno Edgard. Thank you for joining us. And now today we have an interesting discussion coming your way. Whenever we think about the word prisons, we think about a place that is desolate for the worst people in community. But you will be interested to know that people who are in prisons, that's inmates, have rights as well, and they're still human beings because as far as prisons are concerned, they are a second chance, a place for rehabilitation when it comes to some people who have committed crimes in society. So we're going to have a discussion on some of the rights that inmates have when it comes to Uganda prisons, but also how Uganda prisons is ensuring that inmates, that staff, that everyone concerned with prisons are safe from the spread of Ebola virus disease. And with me today to tackle these issues and talk about these issues is the Commissioner of Uganda Prisons, that's Mr. Frank Baine. You are welcome to Issues at Hand.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno, and thank you, dear viewers. Like you have heard, I'm called Frank Baine, Commissioner of Prisons and Prison Spokesperson. I am glad to be on this particular TV because it's a family TV. To talk matters concerning the prisons. Remember, most of those people there, they are fathers, they are mothers, they are sisters and brothers of ours. So ideally, I don't think it's desolate as they think, because the prison is like a hospital. People go there because they have a psychological sickness called deviance, and they get some treatment. And they are there temporarily, apart from a few who are supposed to stay with us for the rest of their life. But 99% of the prisoners actually get back to community after serving their sentences or after their remand period. So it's a place where it's a holdout for those who have short-term, even long-term, and they are there for a purpose. And I think we are trying our best to fulfill our obligations.
Thank you. Wonderful, and thank you for that. It's very important for us to remember that these are family members and these are people who are just going for rehabilitation. That's very important as well. And take us through your role as Commissioner of Prisons.
Well, as I said, I'm a prison spokesperson and I'm in charge of the public relations officer. So my office is the one which interacts directly with the public, including the media. I receive complaints both from within and outside, and I ensure that they get they are responded to within at least 6 hours. There must be a response in whatever situation. And of course, I also have to pick what goes within to explain to the public what happens inside the prison that they are not aware, and also demystifying a number of things and warning the people among the very many conmen that are growing by the day in this country, claiming they can have their people released, claiming they want to help people enter the service, claiming they are selling products. So that is my work, to make sure that the public understands what we do and to make sure the public appreciates what we go through, and even the people inside. Also, I get it when I represent prisons on national organizing committee and other fora, so that what I get there, I bring it back and we share.
And so you are the right person to talk to when it comes to these issues. Now, issue number one on the table today is Ebola. So there's been an outbreak of Ebola in the country, specifically in places like Mubende and Kasanda, but in Kampala as well. And we would like to know how Uganda prisons is ensuring that there will not be the spread of Ebola in prisons, because we know that these are heavily ingested areas, and it can be a flight risk when it comes to the spread of Ebola.
Well, thank you for that wonderful question. But I want to take viewers slightly back. That in 1990s, Uganda Prison Service was one of the frontline institutions in the campaign against HIV/AIDS, and it is because of that upfront approach that we have managed to contain the numbers of cases in the prisons. And the recent one was COVID-19. When COVID-19 came, we had to create the isolation centers, we had to institute the guidelines as given by Ministry of Health, and because of that, we had about 3,000 inmates and about 100 staff getting COVID, but we only lost 3 inmates and 2 staff. That tells you how keen we are. And therefore, by the time Ebola came, like everybody else, we were actually set. And that's why when the president announced the lockdown in this stretch of Kasanda and Mubende, and of course gave warnings around Kampala, the Commissioner General issued guidelines on what to do in these areas. And that's why, first and foremost, we have restricted the visitations in those areas. 2, we have restricted even the visitations when prisoners are at court or if they are performing any duty. But we have also suspended outside prison work for these areas that are affected: Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono, Kasanda, and Mubende. And then we have issued instructions that prisoners who fall sick in the prisons should not be taken to the public hospitals. They should instead be forwarded to Makshon Bay Prison Hospital, because it is that crisscrossing that would be likely bringing us the problem. But above all, we have set up a wing, hospital wing, in one of our prisons in Ruzira, Kampala Remand. We have divided it into 2. One half has been made ready to receive any Ebola patient who would be a prisoner, because sometimes it is hard to manage some of these cases in the public hospitals. So we have created one wing. Then another wing is to receive, like all the prisoners now that are coming to court through the first time, now they also be in Kampala Remand, so that we wait for the 21 days period, then they can now be taken to the respective areas. And we think that isolation system and quarantine is a very effective one. And of course, the old instructions about COVID guidelines has not stopped. Putting on masks, washing, social distance, that one has been done. But for purposes of accessing justice and these, of course, the numbers increasing, we have put a window for the advocates. So the advocates, with them, they would have special permission, but they have to be cleared from prisoners' headquarters to go and see their clients, because we don't want the prisoners to miss on justice simply because of this, as the numbers will be too much. And you know, right now we have 74,000 prisoners instead of 20,000, which is our capacity. But we cannot chase any. We simply have to see how to operate within the situations.
And now, based on those very numbers, how is the measure of social distancing working?
No. The social distancing is for the outsiders. As long as the outsiders don't get contact with the people inside, it has no problem. Even that's how we managed to do this during COVID. That the problem were those who are already inside. But the one who comes to visit and then gets into contact, the moment this person goes inside with it, then that would be a big problem. That's why for COVID, because it was a bigger problem, we had to open up Chitaria. Actually, we ended up opening about 6 prisons. Chitaria, Chigo, Sentema, Kasangati, and Kauga were opened as isolation centers. One would feel put under quarantine 40 days. Then as we were doing the quarantine, we open another one in a session like that. By the time we reach the end, this one is cleared and empty, like that. So, but we have seen that Ebola, if you have noticed, even in Ministry of Health records, the figures are going down. We only got a scare when 3 of our people in Mubende were suspected to have Ebola, but the tests were taken and the results came back negative. Since that, we have had a stable situation. And I can comfortably report that we have a near case of Ebola and we have a near case of COVID-19.
Wonderful, and may those measures long continue, may those records long continue, so that everyone involved.
Of course, with the
prisons,
public cooperation. Fortunately, when we talk to the public, they understand. We are not doing it to punish anybody, but we are doing it to help, because the moment such a disease enters such a congested place, then the cries would be too many. And I want to thank, especially the medical team for Uganda Prison Service. By the way, we have about 700 staff for medical only, and they have done a wonderful job in all these epidemics upcoming. So we are alert, we are in charge, and we don't expect any surprises. And even if the surprises tended to come, like I told you, we are ready. We have an Ebola center for prisoners in Kampala Remand. Even we have a center for staff at staff clinic.
Now I know, and we shall discuss that later when it comes to challenges, that there might be an issue of resources, and many prisons are overwhelmed. Like you said, the capacity is 20,000, but the actual number is 74,000 inmates. But interestingly, on the point of not being able, of the inmates not being able to be visited, because that must be hard on them. 21 days without seeing any loved one in the situation that they are in is really hard. I remember watching a documentary where of a prison in Bosnia, where they had a system where you can where a prisoner, an inmate, could talk to their loved ones online. I don't know if that's something that Uganda Prison is thinking about.
Of course, we have the telephone contact through the social workers, but of course, you know, we are not advanced to those levels. And yes, it is true, not connecting to the outside world, it also hurts us. But there are two evils. There is death, not only for you, but even for others who wouldn't wish to be victims of it. And then there is struggling. Actually, yesterday I was watching Professor Nwagaba. He was talking that the conditions we are in, socially, economically, we are actually trying to survive. So if we can try to survive for the meantime until things stabilize, then that's it. And that's why we are saying we know it's painful. That's not the way we do things, but this is business, not business as usual. And the last time I remember when we had started, we got a lot of condemnation, how we were not looking at the rights of the inmates and the like, but we stood our ground and said, well, one would rather suffer than die. But by the end of the day, the ones who were condemning us even turned and said, you did a wonderful job. To see that in these conditions, everybody knew that the prisons, and by the way, prisons outside lost very many people in different countries. And simply because they didn't put an effort to become strict. They didn't want to become bold and say, yes, we know we are supposed to do this. But the circumstances are that we must adhere to the guidelines given by Ministry of Health. And that's what has saved us.
Wonderful. And going now to the rights of inmates in prisons. But even before we go there, take us through the process. So a suspected criminal is taken before court, and court process has gone on, and this suspected criminal is convicted of a crime and sentenced to a term in prison. What is the process of that suspect now entering the prison service?
Mr. Bruno, permit me to go a little bit behind. You know, a number of times our people don't understand the difference between police cells and detention cells together with the prison. So in the law system in this country is that when a crime has been committed, or when somebody is suspected to have committed a crime, either the individuals or the local leaders report to the police, or police comes in on a tip-off. They come, they make arrests, they take the suspect to police. At police, they make the statements. And these statements, police opens a file which it sends to the Director of Public Prosecution. Public Prosecution does what they call perusal to confirm whether there is grain in what this person is being accused or not. So when the Directorate of Public Prosecution is satisfied that what police is trying to state constitutes an offense, either a misdemeanor or a felony, then they forward this file to court. and the suspect is taken to court. Sometimes when the process delays, police grants what they call the police bond, as they are trying to finalize with the file. Now, when the person appears to court, then the magistrate has two things. Either this person comes and says, I'm guilty, and the magistrate sentences this person to court, to prison, or when he reaches to court, this person says, I don't know this case. And the magistrate, on his discretion, decides that when this person goes back home, will interfere with investigation, and then orders that this person is sent to prison for a specific number of days on remand. Normally they are 7, 14, 28, but the discretion rests with the magistrate. Then from there is what they prepare, what they call a warrant. This commitment warrant reads the names, the details of the offense, and the court, and even the instruction to which superintendent of prisons should receive this person. The moment they have got these documents that able to explain about this person that is being taken to prison, then this person is transported to the prison. In most cases, people don't like to see that prison bus. So when the prison bus, you enter the prison bus, but basically when you're in court and the magistrate says, I am sending you on remand, you'll see uniforms change. The police which was standing will be now replaced by this uniform. That means now you have become a prisoner, either on remand or a convicted prisoner. Now, a convicted prisoner leaves court to go and serve a sentence. Yet, a remand prisoner is kept off the public while the investigations are going on for purposes of deciding whether this person is guilty or not guilty for what he's being accused of. So when you go into the bus or whatever means, you reach the gate of the prison, you get out of the vehicle, you will find a gentleman called the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper will not allow anybody inside without first cross-checking the papers which have come with the person from court. Even if the other person who has brought this person is a fellow staff, the gatekeeper must certify that this is the warrant that is committing Frank Baine, Frank Baine, his real names, and the case is that one. Then, and of course, the property which this person has come with, they are all surrendered to the gatekeeper, and then the gatekeeper conducts a search. After conducting a search, then the prisoner is opened inside, depending on the time they arrive. Because in most cases arrivals are in the evening, these people are taken to the admission ward so that the proper admission will take place in the morning. The property which you have, you are not allowed to go with it in the ward, because they will quickly give you uniform to make sure tomorrow the process of admission now starts. Who you are, what you have been doing, if you had any ailments with you, all those are recorded. They have to check. There is what we call a strip down search. Have to strip, take the photographs, take the measurements, take your weight. Why? Because a number of people have entered the prison. 1 week later, they are claiming they have been tortured. But when the admission book is clearly reading the marks which they are referring to when they came with them. And that's why you have seen a number of people make a lot of noise about torture in the prison, but nobody wants to go to court, because they know when by the time we reach court and produce our evidence, we shall prove that the torture, if it happened, didn't happen in where? In the prison. So with them, they can make some political shout out, but they will not want to go down to the regard. Yet torture is an act. It's a law in this country. So we do that. Then of course they will call it the admission process. Then if you are a convict, we need to know what you are doing outside. We need to ask what would you be interested in, because rehabilitation is also good when somebody participates in what they want to do. Like education is a voluntary. Somebody says, I stopped in P7, but I want to continue with education. Me, I am a farmer. I think if I can continue my farming, I have no problem. Me, I was a carpenter. I think that one could work for me. If you are a teacher, then you say, okay, then since you are a teacher outside, then you'll continue to help the ones who are inside that need the what? The learning. So then when the admission process is determined, there is what they call the labor allocation. Then you go into the routine, the rules, the do's and the don'ts in the prison. Of course, there are steps. There is the work which is done by the officer in charge and senior officers. There is a work which is done by the reception. There is also medical examination as part of the admission. Because like women, a number of them come to the prison not knowing they are even pregnant. But when you carry out those tests, you say you are pregnant, then they say, hey, I didn't know I was pregnant. So those ones, then some have even diseases they don't know. So it helps us to do the treatment for them so that they don't infect others, but we also keep them healthy. And then, so the social workers come in when it is a convict to see which rehabilitation program. Is it vocational training? Is it functional adult literacy? Is it formal education? That's why for us we study from the kindergarten to the university. And now is it like the women like the fashion and the design? So we are, then is it farming? Then that's why you find that in most of our farms, the people we take there are those who have a farming background for easy. But sometimes, depending on what you have seen this person, for example, if somebody has been stealing bags of women and mobile phones, that person needs to go to the farm to understand that the Bible is clear. From sweat we shall eat, not running around with people's things. So those are some of the processes that we go through, and by the end of the day, it is called a sentence regime. By the end of the day, the person either have changed. The statistics are very clear that our reoffending rate is at 17%, and it is one of the lowest in the world. Why? Because I think our rehabilitation programs are more effective, are more practical and friendly. A number of times I get bombarded when people say, how can these criminals, they have gone to prison to pay, now we see they are doing exams. You see, yes, doing exams, when I was doing my master's, I did it in rehabilitation programs, which is the most effective. I realized the result showed that 99% of those who attain education in the prison totally change. While others who do like religious empowerment, sometimes it's temporal. They have a tendency to relapse into going back. But on the other hand, Uganda Prison Service is part of Uganda. And therefore, if we have a principle of universal primary education, universal secondary education, it's incumbent upon us that those who missed to benefit from this program out, now that we have them in the prison, is the chance to make sure they do what? They benefit. Because the moment a person gets educated, the perspective to life issues totally changes. Me and you are what we are, largely because of the education we have attained. And that's why we think education is one of the major programs that helps us to transform our inmates.
That's powerful, and that's true indeed. Now, on the issue, and I know a lot of Ugandans always talk about this, the issue of remand vis-a-vis conviction, that there have been instances or cases that reports of people who have been remanded to prison, but they end up staying longer there than they are supposed to. And then, so what is the prescribed time for someone who is remanded in a prison?
Fortunately, I've moved with the Uganda Constitution 1995. These are not my words. The words of the Constitution say that where a person is arrested in respect of a criminal offense, the person is entitled, of course, to apply for bail and on bail conditions. In the case of an offense which is triable by the High Court as well as by the subordinate court, if that person has been remanded in custody in respect of the offense for 60 days before trial, the person shall be released on bail on such a conditions as the court considers reasonable. And that is very important, as court considers, not as police or prisons considers. A number of people say, why don't you release those people? They have said, they are telling you that the release on bail is dependent on court, purely. Now, he says, if the case is triable only by High Court, and if that person has been remanded in custody for 180 days before the case is committed to the High Court, that person shall be released on bail on such a conditions as the court considers reasonable. So, release of a prisoner who is not convicted is dependent, entirely dependent on court. Unfortunately, after these two laws, the law is very silent about what happens if the person is committed to the High Court. And that's where people spend 2, 3, 4 years. We have been reducing the gap to about 1.5 to 2 years. But you see, because the law is silent, when they say they are ready to commit means that a director of public prosecution is ready with enough evidence and ready to proceed with the trial. But because the judges are few, because court is not ready, they commit you to the High Court and highlight what the evidence that is going to be brought in court. They call it summary of the findings, and then they say you are hereby committed to the High Court and you wait for the next convenient court session. I don't know it is convenient too. And that one can take 2 years, it can take 3 years. When court is ready is when you go to court. So, and if court is not ready, you don't go to court. Who do we blame? For us, we have the people, we register their complaint, we forward their complaint, but these people can only go to court if court is ready. Of course, when you talk to the court, they will tell you a judge has 365 cases. That means he's supposed to try a case per day, doesn't have weekend, he can't fall sick, there is no holiday, which is practically impossible. Some cases take years, yet you are telling the person to accomplish 365 cases in what? In a year. Because they also are under a lot of constraints. I don't want to speak for them. So for us, yes, we have these people. Yes, the problem right now we have about 37,000 prisoners on remand. Those are not supposed to be our people. Those are court people who shouldn't be there. But court has said keep them and give them to us when we need them. So, and our hands are tied because the law says as court considers reasonable.
Now, my guest for today, for those of you who have just joined us, is Mr. Frank Baine, who is Commissioner of Prisons. Now, in the Prisons Act, there's a provision about how prisoners who are legally in prison are entitled to humane treatment. But for some prisoners, we have heard of stories of exploitation, especially when it comes to hard labor, and we have also had instances of torture. What is Uganda Prisons doing to ensure that these the rights of prisoners are upheld?
Well, yes. The first and foremost, the function of Uganda Prison Service is to ensure that every person detained legally in a prison is kept in humane, safe custody, produced in court when required until lawfully discharged or removed, or to facilitate the social rehabilitation and reformation of prisoners through specific training and education program. Now, Part B is mainly for the convicted prisoners, and Part A is for the remand prisoners. So, sometimes we give sweeping statements. When you hear prisoners are doing labor, then to you it is hard labor, it is abuse of rights, it is exploitation. But hardly do we read Article 25 of the Uganda Constitution, which talks about protection from slavery, servitude, and forced labor. And it says that no person shall be held in slavery or servitude. 2, no person shall be required to perform forced labor. Then number 3 has the gist of the matter, that for the purpose of this article, forced labor does not include any labor required in consequence of, of the sentence or order of court. So, if you are doing that labor as part of the sentence management, then it is not forced labor. But those who have not read this, they want to run around and say, this is forced labor. Yes, if you are in Kampala and you have not dug, when they take you for digging, it doesn't mean it's forced labor. It means that those who are rehabilitating you have seen that that is the program which would help reorient your deviant way of doing things. If you even continue, they say that any labor required of any person or any person, while that person is lawfully detained, which, though not required in consequence of a sentence or an order of court, is reasonably necessary for the interest of the hygiene and the existence in the... So, it is a question that we don't read, and therefore we give sweeping statements. So, any work you have seen prisoners perform is not hard labor, it's not exploitation. Even when you go in the Prisons Act, Section 58, which talks about the prisoners, rights of prisoners, it clearly indicates to undertake meaningful remunerated employment. This is part of what the prisoners work for. I keep telling people that I have been an OC when a woman comes to see the husband and he asks the husband if he has worked for any money to go and buy books for the children. We have a situation that out of 10 prisoners, only 2 get visitors. Those who get visitors get many. But the majority who don't get visitors don't get visitors. The only way to do their upkeep, in addition to what they get from government, is some of these small works they have to do around. And that's why you find that a prison is like a family. So, fortunately, a law came into force. The law of torture is in place. Anybody who is deemed to have tortured is taken to court. We have about 7 staff who are behind the bars, accused of torture and convicted of torture. So, actually, when you torture, it's no longer the function of the prisons to apprehend you. No, it is between you and the law. And the law is very clear. And the judges are very, very clear on that you do it, then it is your personal responsibility, no longer the institutional responsibility. The only thing that happens a number of times is that we tend to mix politics with administration. And those ones can't be the same. Because politics is about raising sentiments, and administration is about streamlining performance, organization. And I keep telling people this, that a prison is not a hotel, it's not a holiday camp. There are things you must do when you become a prisoner. If you want to do them, if you don't want to do them, don't come. We don't invite, we will come. So if you think you are going to come and sit down and relax because you are in a prison, forget. For us, we know idleness is not a solution to deviance.
But on that issue of remuneration from labor, I think that's where the biggest noise is made, because
the remuneration is not, it's not a salary.
Prison officials who have been getting getting that money that's supposed to be given as remuneration and keeping it from them.
I am telling you that our prisoners are sensitized and they are aware. Of course, the problem that has been going on, and that's not our problem. We are not the ones who determine the rates. At first, I remember when I joined the prisons, it used to be 1 shilling per day worked. Then it was extended to 500 for skilled labor, 250 and semi-skilled, and 100 for unskilled labor. Now the minister revised it. For skilled labor, it is 1,350. Semi-skilled is 750. Unskilled is 500. And the prisoners access that money. That's why I'm telling you that you see a person can be in prison for 2 years. Government does not buy toothpaste. Government does not buy toothbrush. Some of those people, by the time they come to the prison, they are in tatters. Apart from uniform, they don't have clothes. But every time they come out, you see they are putting on clothes. You wonder where is the magic of buying these clothes. So this is the labor, the money they get from this kind of works they get to look after them. Some of them don't come from the well-to-do families that they will buy them flasks. But the man will work and say, no, I need hot water. So he buys himself a flask because that money is accessible as of when they want it and for what they want it. Those who want to save it, at the end of your sentence, you are given your money and you go home. But there is one thing which is also very clear, that you know, if you come to prison, you don't know how to sew clothes. Prison trains you for about a year to learn tailoring. Now, they don't pay you for learning to become a tailor. They only start paying you when you start producing the uniforms of other prisoners. If you are not a carpenter, and you have come and you are trained to become a carpenter, sometimes when the prisoners go out and said, you know me, I spent 5 years, but they have only receiving money for 2 years, he does not tell the people that, you see, I spent 2 years training to become a carpenter. And when they are training you, they can't pay you because you are wasting timber, you are wasting the tools, you are being under instructions. So they cannot pay you for that. They only pay you for being productive. That's the difference. That when you are in the process of learning, like everywhere, I have a background of teaching. When you are a student teacher, nobody pays you. But when you start working, then that's when they pay you. If you are a student doing medicine, yes, you are going to be a doctor, but you must pay school fees. It's after you have finished that you start getting paid as a doctor. So even prisoners, when they are being trained to do these specified or specialized works, they are not paid for that period.
Definitely, and of course, it's always our prayer that the rights of prisoners are upheld and are not abused by.
You know, one interesting thing is that minus COVID and this Ebola, prisons run what we call an open door policy. Until 2000, we used to run a closed door policy. Nobody would know what is inside the prison. But now, a prison is anybody who wants to go to the prison can go as long as you have what? A purpose. And whatever is seen, we take positively, what we call positive criticism. We take it in. That's why even my office is there to respond to the criticism, to take notes and lessons and improve the other day. But sometimes a number of us, partly because we are not informed, partly because we are driving towards a certain intention, we distort facts so that we appear to be the philanthropists that the world expects to see, when we are actually not. But I want to tell you, prisons lives like a family. And that's why we changed it from the forceful penal system. Now we run what we call dynamic security. Even those who are in the farm, before you take prisoners to dig, you first explain why you are taking them there, what they should learn from there, and how it is beneficial for them to do that. That you have to engage them. A number of times we are being criticized. Yes, at the times, at the beginning, those leaders called katikiros were used, because at the time the prison came here, it was not meant for the good news. It was a punitive function. It was a deterrent function. The colonialists wanted to scare those who are refusing to grow raw materials and refusing to pay taxes to submit and start doing. But now the world has transformed. That's why we are moving from penal to correctional systems. That we have to explain. Even these people, I want to tell you that they understand that we are not the problem. The problem is the what? Is the law. But of course, when you are running a system, you have 14,000 staff. You don't expect all of them to have that angelic thinking. Once in a while, we have got what we call staffed inmate violence. Once in a while, we have got inmate staff violence. The other day in Roro, a prisoner killed our staff. We have had prisoners killing themselves. We have had prisoners, we have had also staff killing themselves. So when you are dealing with humanities, they are always probing some abnormal behaviors, but they are taken case by case.
Actually, on that very note, why is it that some staff members are committing suicide when it comes to prisons? What could be the cause?
No, it's not prison. It's not prisons. Violence is a mind game, and the mind game. This is a family TV. Mind games start from the family. A number of people you see become violent in adulthood. They would have a background of violence in back home, either by the parents or by the maids, or there must be a trauma that keeps on growing. So unfortunately, a number of times we see the explosion. It's like a volcano. When you see the explosion, you think it has erupted, but it has been working underground for very many years before it reached the surface. And that's why when you see a fight, when you see a reaction, you know there has been a preparation long ago. But yes, sometimes these young men are young in a relationship because we recruit senior 4 leavers. These are our children. Now, unlike us, for us who by primary will have matured because of the conditions you go through, these are children kept like broiler chicken. Now, sometimes the girls grow faster than the boys. So you'll find that by the time they are getting married, she has had about 1 or 2, 3 boyfriends. But this boy, from senior 4 to prisons, then finds adolescence is telling him, this is what you love. Some few, because they don't know even how to become husbands and wife. Then in the middle of it, the relationship collapses. This young man thinks the world has ended. Doesn't know how to move from this relationship to another. Now, I keep telling people, if you are holding a stick and you get annoyed, you will use the stick. If you have a knife, you have the knife. If you have the gun, you use the what? The gun. It's not easy that you drop the gun and you run for the what? For the stick. So unfortunately, because these people hold guns, and for us, we think when we have looked at the academic competence and we have taken them the rigorous training, we think we have matured them enough. But there is that human component that of emotion, which sometimes is very hard to unlock or to lock for that matter. So those cases, they are very few, but they are there. And that's why it requires a corrective situation. That's why you find that either this person comes from the background of war, or this one comes from a background of a polygamous family, or this one comes from a background of where one of the parents died when he was an infant. So they have that trauma. For example, now if the guns are fired here, me and you know that is gun sound. But a suckling baby is just scared by the sound, not knowing what it is. Now, why do you think it is okay? You have known it is a gun. This kid will grow with that trauma. At a certain time, it will explode. And unfortunately, most of the reflexes, they start from the brain.
Definitely. And lastly and quickly, what are some of the challenges that Uganda Prison Services face?
Well, of course, the challenges are Ugandan challenges. One, we operate a budget. We operate at 45% of the budget that we need to do what we are supposed to do. That's one. Two, congestion is one of the biggest problems. While other agencies are congested with papers, for us we are congested with human beings. They eat, they sleep, they complain, they fall sick. So that's why I'm telling you that we have a capacity of 20,000, but we have 74,000 inmates. Meaning where one person is supposed to be sleeping, we are keeping there a minimum of 3 people. Now, when you bring many people in one place, the disease prevalence, even the other programs which would be in workshops and the like, we have since turned some of those workshops into accommodation facilities. Because what is the priority? Is the priority workshop or where people can at least sleep? And that one, we are supposed to do a number of things. Segregate inmates according to offenses. Now we do male, female. To a least extent, we do capital, minor, but sometimes we mix them. So those are things which are affected, starting from the budgetary effect, looking at the physical infrastructure, even the staffing levels. We are now operating at 26%. Now, 26%, you are dealing with people who are not a joke. Society has said, get away, but for us, when they reach there, we look them as angels. If I walked you in the prison and said, that one killed, that one robbed, that one kidnapped, and I said, well, you can greet them, you may want to say, you man, you want me dead. But psychologically, we have to be prepared to deal with them. And you are not dealing with 10-5. If you go to some prisons like Upper, you'll go and find 3,000 people. And you are in the middle of them. When they get any problem, it is you they look at. So it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of patience for you to manage such a condition, because this is a vulnerable group.
Thank you so much, Afande Frank Baine, for taking us through the issues that pertain to prisons and the rights that are how Uganda Prison Service is ensuring that rights for prisoners are upheld, and the issue of protecting everyone concerned in prisons from the spread of Ebola virus disease. And thank you so much for tuning in to Issues at Hand on Church of Uganda Family TV. We continue to dissect issues as a family. Enjoy your weekend. God richly bless you.